And Japan's Nikkei just closed up 10%, its largest single-day gain since 2008. We'll dig into the seesaw of it all.
You know, and the thing is that's important to realize is if you look at the fundamentals of the economy, it's still very strong. The things we were saying last week are true this week. We are still the envy of the world. Economically in every way, even the market now, my gosh, over the past 4 years, it's just exploded. So this was a slight correction. There may be more of a correction to come, but that has more to do with how stocks have been overpriced and the overexuberance that we've been hearing traders warn about for a very, very long time, that these stocks are being overpriced. But we'll see what happens. The Nikkei, again, bouncing back yesterday. We'll see what happens here today.
Also this morning, there's more fallout from the comments Donald Trump made over the weekend in Georgia. We'll explain why that state may be back in play for Democrats this November. With us, we have the host of Way Too Early, White House Bureau Chief at Politico, Jonathan Lemire. U.S. Special Correspondent for BBC News, Katty Kay, is with us. Managing Editor at The Bulwark, Sam Stein, and Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist and associate editor of The Washington Post, Eugene Robinson.
I got to ask a question. Hey, Bobby Dahlbach, what's with the glasses?
What? Wait. Oh, Lemire, he looks good.
This is just the latest effort in my ongoing struggle to look smarter. And to this point,
or you get up
have largely failed to this point in my life and career. So this is just the latest trick that I'm trying. We'll go for a few days. We'll see how it goes. Do we like them?
I like it.
Try again. All right. So, Katty,
they look adorable.
Katty Kay. No, Jonathan, you look great. Katty Kay.
Thank you, John.
Keir Starmer's premiership has started off with quite a challenge. There's not a lot of reporting in the United States about this, but a lot of white nationalists, a lot of neo-Nazis have been going around doing absolutely horrific things to Muslims, to people of color generally. I saw a headline of a Filipino nurse that was being rushed in to help with some injuries caused by these white nationalist riders, and she was pelted with rocks. What's going on over there? And can you explain how this was all started by a big lie?
Yeah, so this was triggered by an absolutely just awful event a couple of weeks ago when 3 young girls who had been to a Taylor Swift dance class were stabbed to death by an individual who for a while, out on social media, it was claimed that the killer was a Muslim, and that triggered attacks against mosques in Stockport, the town where these girls were killed, and rioting out on the streets. It then turned out the killer was not a Muslim. He was a 17-year-old, but the police made the unusual step of releasing his name. His parents had been Rwandan refugees, but he was born in the United Kingdom. He's British, he's black, but he was born in the United Kingdom. He is now in custody, but it hasn't stopped these far-right nationalists coming out onto the streets and attacking people who they think shouldn't be in the United Kingdom, whether they're there because they're brown or whether they're there because they're Muslims. What the Prime Minister's challenge would be what they would like to do, the government, my understanding is have a whole load of arrests very fast. But the UK justice system is slow. It takes time to get these people through courts, but they really want to send a message out. Keir Starmer has been out very much in public saying this is not acceptable, denouncing the protesters. But it's an indication of some of this is social media. People jump in there. You've got young kids who seem to have, weirdly, young kids jumping into this who seem to have no political agenda at all, but just it's summertime, they're off school and they see the violence and they seem to pile in. And it has to stop.
Anarchy.
It has to be stopped, more importantly.
Yeah. Anarchy in the UK. We remember those images from the 1970s. I will say this is a great opportunity for the new Prime Minister to show strength and act aggressively, clean up the streets, get these racists off the streets, arrest them, and make sure that they face justice. Gene Robinson, before we get to the news of the day, behold, you bring tidings of good news to Democrats, east, west, north, and south. For unto them is born the reason for exuberance. You know, Democrats, this is one thing I never understood about Democrats. They're like, we don't deserve good things. I'm like, BS, you take what you need. You fight. If you need it, you take it by getting the most votes, by knocking on the most doors. And every time you knock on a door, every time you plant a yard sign, you do it with exuberance, you do it with joy, you do it knowing you have no choice but to win. And Gene, you're telling Democrats, it's okay.
It's okay.
You can be happy while you're going out about your business of working hard and winning elections.
Right. You don't have to be overconfident, but be happy. You just had like 2 of the best weeks ever in politics, right? You've had this amazing couple of weeks. You've got more money than you can spend at this point. You just have to figure out how to spend it. You've got an opponent, a Republican ticket, that's self-destructing in any number of ways. They just helped you put Georgia back in play for the election. So, yeah, you should be a little pumped at this point, and you can be happy about what has happened without saying, without being overconfident, without being silly about it and sort of not tending to business. So tend to your business and get it done. It's a lot of 3 yards in a cloud of dust. There's that part of it, but do it with some joy and do it.
Exactly.
It's a happy time for the Democratic Party right now.
As old Nike commercials always say, do it like Sam Stein.
Speaking of a happy
with a
time.
smile on your face.
Vice President Kamala Harris will announce her running mate for the Democratic ticket at some point today, and will appear with the pick. Just a little bit.
Again.
She'll appear with that pick at an event this evening in Philadelphia. NBC News reports the finalists still include Senator Mark Kelly and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, as well as Governors Andy Beshear, J.B. Pritzker, Josh Shapiro, and Tim Walz. While Buttigieg is still in the running, it's worth noting he is scheduled to be in Maine today and tomorrow as part of his cabinet role. Shapiro, for his part, had a fairly normal day yesterday and played basketball with his son while his 2 dogs looked on at the bevy of reporters staked outside their home. That's not what my dog would be doing. Okay, and not to read the tea leaves, but hours from now, he's set to deliver remarks at today's Harris for President event at Temple University. Meanwhile, Walz appeared at a Harris fundraiser in Minnesota, where reporters say he made a veiled reference to the VP slot, saying, quote, I think all of you know, you don't wake up as a school teacher just angry about something and figure out how to get elected to Congress and become the governor, and then life comes at you fast. Whatever happens. Wow.
Well,
that's not veiled.
No,
it doesn't seem veiled.
It doesn't seem veiled, but it's getting next to impossible to read the tea leaves. It seemed like about a week ago. And by the way, that's credit to the Harris campaign that really have done a great job, Sam Stein, at keeping this very close. About a week ago, I started getting reporting from various sources that Josh Shapiro was a lock. Then I started getting reporting that there was fierce and furious pushback against others in the party that were trying to undermine his candidacy. Now the last 24 hours we've been hearing that Tim Walz is a lock, which means, of course, we know absolutely nothing about what Kamala Harris is going to do. It's probably, it's going to be Walz or Shapiro.
Yeah, this is such a weird process because it's been condensed to a couple weeks, right? And usually you don't have the prospective VP candidates out there in public kind of demonstrating their acumen to be VP, right? Usually they're more subtle about it, but in this case, because it was so condensed, you had Tim Walz, Josh Shapiro, Andy Beshear, even Pete Buttigieg going out there and sort of auditioning in front of us to, and really for Kamala Harris to say, hey, this is the type of, skill set I could bring to the ticket. At this juncture, honestly, I have yet to hear a definitive, one way or another. It could go either way. I think you correctly identified the two front runners here. The only thing I would say is that the amount of anti-Shapiro stuff that has been pushed, not just publicly, but privately, suggests both that he is the front runner because people are trying to knock him off that pedestal, but also like some weird discomfort within the party over him that I did not know existed. I think ultimately the party would get around him for obvious reasons, and also I think the case for him outweighs the case against him substantially. But that's been the most interesting thing for me the past week, is just watching this sort of latent anti-Shapiro movement kind of take hold.
Latent anti-Semitism, I'll say it as a Baptist. I mean, you've got the most gifted speaker of the lot. You've got, when you see Kamala Harris and Josh Shapiro together, just a generational shift, really dynamic, striking generational shift. JFK taught us that politics was visual. Seeing those two younger candidates on the screen, and in American politics, younger means anybody that was born after 1946. You see those two younger, dynamic people on the screen, and you're like, wait, okay, wow, this is a new generation ready to go past old grievances and move forward. And I will say, too, let's just say it, I am, Meek and I have both been very impressed by Governor Walz, but we've been impressed by Governor Walz watching his witty little asides with his daughter or on Twitter. He's Democratic governor of Minnesota. I will say, though, he is, there is a reason, Jonathan Lemire, the left wing likes him. And this is definitely a left-wing versus a centrist battle right now that is playing out. It's not about Israel. There are people that are attacking Josh Shapiro in a veiled way on Israel because he's Jewish. It's that simple. Tim Walz has hugged Benjamin Netanyahu, embraced him, talks about our close alliance. And his language on Israel is actually would be more of a concern if they're worried about Palestinian protests outside of Chicago than, yeah, let me say it, the Jew, Josh Shapiro, who has called Benjamin Netanyahu the worst prime minister in Israel's history. So this is shaping up. People on the far left are not liking Shapiro. And just bluntly, this anti-Semitism strain that we see from extremes on the left and the right, unfortunately finding its way into this fierce pushback against a man who I think, with all due respect to everybody else, seems beyond. It's the logical pick, especially if you'd like to win Pennsylvania, the one state you have to win.
Yeah, you've certainly identified parts of the reasons why there is this pushback to Shapiro. A lot of it is also just perception versus reality. He and Walz really not that different on Israel and other issues. But you're right. So our reporting this morning shows that though no one has been officially eliminated, it is indeed really, it'd be a real surprise if it were anybody other than Walz or Shapiro. This is the pick. And I think you hit upon it that, Walz is seen as more progressive, more left than Shapiro. So then it's a question of what message does Vice President Harris want to send? Is it going to be a nod to those in her own party, or is she trying to pivot more towards the middle, more towards a general election, picking the more moderate governor of Pennsylvania? And Eugene Robinson, obviously geography does not always play in to these choices. We've seen, in fact, most running mates are not